We are in the throes of the unknown in terms of the postseason as we wait for spring ball. Basketball is happening, but certainly we still want to talk about football, and we're going to. As we answer your questions in the first, actually it's the second, I think, postseason mailbag, but now that we've had a little bit of time for everything to settle. So we're going to answer your questions right here on the Michigan Mailbag on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday. We're back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we're going to get right to it, starting with the leaders and best. James Crudup at James Crudup 6. If you were on the playoff committee, what would be your criteria to get the 12 best teams and not the most deserving teams? I mean, I think my criteria, I still hate 12, man. I really do. My criteria would all be about wins and losses. I would get to I think I would wait to start having those. I don't think I'd necessarily have rankings straight away when they do, right? And you start getting into mid-November and they have rankings. That makes sense. But I think at that point, I would actually be more so coming up with a strength of schedule for everybody. And then kind of doing almost like a computer ranking type in terms of, here's who has the best wins, who has the worst losses, and kind of rank things, right? In that sense. So my criteria would kind of have a lot more to do with what the regular season was. You lose a bad game, I understand Michigan finished well. But if you're Ohio State and you lost to Oregon, they're the number one team in the country, essentially. Okay, cool. Oregon played a pretty decent schedule in terms of they had to play Ohio State, they had to play Michigan, they had to play another playoff team in Boise State. Didn't play Penn State, so until obviously they did in the Big Ten championship game. But you're right, you kind of gauge some of those types of things, and that would have probably hurt Michigan in the 4 team, at least the last couple years. But I would be looking at it more so in terms of that. Now, if you go undefeated, it's basically you're in. I'd look at it in Indiana and I'd say, okay, they didn't play a lot of people, but they played Ohio State and they lost that game. But they'd still, to me, would be in. You lose one game, and when everyone else has lost one game except for really one team, then yeah, the 11-1 team's probably going to be in. Wins and losses would mean a lot, right? That's why Alabama would be out 9-3. Sorry, but then again, maybe they'd still be in based off of the ranking by beating Georgia. But then maybe you look at Georgia and say they're not as good as they were. I would try to kind of rank that strength of schedule. You could look at Connor Stallions' tweet on the strength of schedule and see how it tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would try to get rid of that. Josh Barr at Jadicki, why only football? Because I asked for Michigan football. Just kidding. The fans are worried about wide receivers, some even about the current position coach. What's the plan to address improvement there? Is more going to be under fire if wide receiver play doesn't look visibly improved in the spring? Number one, it should be visibly improved kind of regardless, just based off of the quarterbacks that they have. I'm not concerned about Ron Bellamy. I've spoken to people inside the building, people that I understand you're going to protect your own, but there are a lot of people that I've spoken to that are people just don't get it. He's fantastic as a recruiter, fantastic as a coach. Some of it's been what he's been working with. I think that they're still attacking the transfer portal. They're still working on some of these things, right? If they don't get it all in the spring, they could get it after the spring, right? But they're going to improve that group. They've got younger players that are going to likely step up as well. So I just really wouldn't be as concerned. I'm not saying I'm not concerned. I'm just saying I wouldn't be as concerned as a lot of people are who think the sky is falling. I think that they'll get it figured out. No, they don't have dependability in the same way that they were with Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson, but you have to keep in mind they were kind of the only ones in the national championship year. They need someone to step up, and I think that they'll get that. You look at Frederick Moore, he looked great in the bowl game. I think Samaj Morgan, if he's healthy, that's helpful. I'm excited to see more Channing Goodwin. And then you've got Andrew Marsh. Donovan McCulley certainly helps out a lot. We'll be interested to see if Jacob Washington can crack the lineup, and then I'm sure they'll bring in 1, if not 2 or 3 more guys. Maybe not 3, but still. They're looking at guys, right? Let them go through the process. Jimmy Whitner 1, what position do you expect to make the biggest improvement over last year? Obviously, quarterback. Easily. Sorry, that's a cop-out, but we're going with it. Number 2, what position needs to be addressed most still in the portal? Obviously, wide receiver, but we'll go ahead and say offensive line as well. I think Lawrence Tatar helps that. I still would like to see another offensive lineman come in. And cornerback, too, just for depth. I mean, I think that you've got guys you can roll with, but if someone gets injured, you start kind of getting in a little bit of a scary place. So I'd like to see corner. They're going to have Thaddeus Dixon from Washington, the number 2 corner in the country in the transfer portal. He's going to be visiting on Sunday. They need to close there. They absolutely need to close. KRT at Farmark84, which incoming freshman not named Bryce will have the biggest impact next season? It's the one that I've already mentioned. It's Andrew Marsh. I think he's ready to play. I know we normally go over freshman receivers every year. Last year, I told you don't think that they're going to make instant impacts. I think the year before, I might have said expect them to make an instant impact. I've never been more sure that since 2017 that you're going to see a freshman make an impact as much as Andrew Marsh. I think he is absolutely going to be a guy that bursts onto the scene in year 1. Is he going to be Ryan Williams? I don't think so, but I think he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and make an impact pretty quickly. Jonathan Joseph at J Joseph 2156. Can Michigan ever turn into a destination where 5 stars come in, even if there are 5 stars ahead of them? Absolutely. I think that's what they're building to. And I think that here's the thing. And this was kind of the point about yesterday's show. They're still building culture whereas a lot of teams are just like trying to accumulate talent and saying, this might work. Michigan's still trying to make a cultural fit and build through recruiting and supplement via the transfer portal. If they can find a way to continuously do that, I mean, it's going to be really hard to overcome, especially because there aren't many teams that are doing that at this point. Most teams are kind of like, okay, how can we get everybody we need through the transfer portal? That's kind of become the new thing. If Michigan can have a Bryce Underwood and he performs really well, that's already a bargaining chip. And if they can continue to build off of that, there's going to be more players that are like, I want to play with him. I want to replace him. I want to play against him, all that kind of stuff. And talking in practice, of course. So I think it's possible, yes. And I think that's how you do it. You just keep building it the way that you are building it. Finishing us out in segment 1, Spencer Whitmore at Spencer Whitmore. You think Sharon will do an alternative jersey besides the blue pants over the next season? I want to revisit the all maize at home during a maize out. Well, I don't think you want an all maize during a maize out because then it becomes difficult when your backdrop is maize and your foreground is maize to see what you're seeing. I wouldn't do that personally. That's kind of what makes the whiteout difficult and why Penn State didn't allow Michigan to wear maize in the whiteout, because you have to go white on white in terms of what you're seeing foreground and background. I think, unfortunately, at some point, we're probably going to see the blue top and white pants. I hope we never do. But no, I think that I think they should just stick with what they got, to be honest. Change the accessories, play around with that. White shoes against Ohio State was nice, all that kind of stuff. All right, we've got so much more coming. Not enough time probably to get to it all, but we will get to it here in just a moment. But before we do, did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, like that gym membership to a gym I've never been to. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel and find those unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscription, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year. You can buy a TV for that price, by the way, when using all of the app's premium features. By the way, that's how I measure things. How many TVs does that buy? Not an OLED, but you know. For me, one of the best features was the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I haven't been using anymore, and I've saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, you're able to automatically set aside money for your future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with my Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, this is where we do the heavy lifting. We get to the victors valiant, the regulars that haven't been asking questions since day one, but have been asking questions regularly. By the way, complete tangent. Since a lot of you seem to care about my sartorial choices today, I am wearing my Bryce Underwood Barstool Carhartt hoodie. It's so comfortable. They aren't a sponsor, but I'm saying that. I just went shopping. I just trying to find my uncle Rick passed away in December suddenly and unfortunately, and we're having a memorial this weekend. And I'm like, all I have at this point in the last like 5 years are like hoodies. So I needed to go get some clothes, and they don't make men's clothes the way they used to. Didn't get a suit. Tried to buy an off-rack suit. Can't find one that fits. Part of that's on me for gaining weight since 2019. But just such a difficult conundrum. Very annoying. Ended up at Somerset after trying to go to Great Lakes Crossing. Just such a debacle. Anyway, that's enough of that. Jim in the North, what are your thoughts on the receivers room next year? I don't think it's necessarily dire. I think guys can grow into their roles, right? Keep in mind, Kendrick Bell, kind of, you could see the glimpses, but last year was his first year playing receiver. So in a way, he's kind of a sophomore rather than a third-year guy. I think a guy like him, Frederick Moore, has got speed. Samaj Morgan just was oft injured. Amarian Walker was injured a lot, and you wonder if he's going to be able to come on yet. Peyton O'Leary's back. You expect Amarian Stewart and Channing Goodwin to be contributors finally. That's just who was already there. You add in Donovan McCulley, you add in the three freshmen, and the fact that they're early enrollees, that helps out a ton. So I'm not as down. I still think they need one or two more guys that are obvious playmakers, and I think that they will, and keep in mind, tight end's part of the receiving group. I think that they can make do with what they have if they have to, and it's not necessarily going to be a bad thing. I think that you saw over the course of the year, they started getting much more open than they had been early in the year. They improved. The problem is the quarterback have been intermittent. You had good games from Davis Warren. You had bad games from Davis Warren. You had good games from Alex Orji more so on the ground, and you had bad games from Alex Orji. So it's going to the floor is raised in the quarterback room. That's the most important thing, I think. Do you think Wink will pick up where he left off next year? I do, because now you've got mostly the guys that have played for him already. So I don't think the learning curve is going to be that high. And I think that with some of the new players, the defensive tackles, it's going to be more like ready, set, go than anything. I mean, yeah, they'll do some twists. They'll do some simulated pressures. They'll do a bunch of kinds of things. But I think that you can kind of set them and go. And I think that it's not going to, the learning curve came at linebacker and nickel. And so I'm still concerned about nickel because we don't know who's going to be nickel with Makari having moved on now. But I feel pretty good now about the defense. And I feel like it should just pick up where it left off, yes. I'm not the one at William Cawthorne 9. With only Jim back and this same staff, what do you think the outcome of this season would have been? I think they probably would have been better. Not necessarily by a wide margin, but they ended up finishing 8-5. I'd give them 10 wins on the season. Might be 9, because I think that they could have maybe beaten Illinois and Washington and maybe got a backdoor sneak into the playoff, and then maybe they lose that. So it's kind of hard to say. I know it's a long ways away, but I live in the DMV area and will attend the Michigan-Maryland game. Will you attend, and is there an opportunity to meet such an A1 celebrity like yourself? At least in my eyes, you're A1. I am Z26, really, but thank you. Yeah, we can make that happen. We'll figure that out once we get to late November. Bryce Underwood was such a huge commit. Why doesn't it seem like all these receivers are lining up to play with him? I mean, it was late in the cycle. If he committed way earlier, then it probably would be different. But keep in mind, they got Andrew Marsh. That's like a huge name, right? That's the biggest name they've gotten since Donovan Peoples-Jones. So I think that people are kind of sleeping on him because he's been committed for a lot longer, right? Transfer portal, you'd expect more. There haven't been a lot of huge names. Some of them have been out there. Zachariah Branch, his price tag's too big. You've had other guys who Michigan really likes Skylar Bell. They couldn't really get the right. Like I said, you can't go to Michigan for a semester and get your Michigan degree. That's just not going to happen. Sounds like it was the same kind of thing with Troy Stellato. So that's kind of more it. There just haven't been like big obvious names out on the board. Now you can sit there and look at like a Dane Key. Not really sure where he was standing in academics, right? Like if there is the 60, right? They're going to take 60 credits. If you have 90, you probably aren't going to come to Michigan because only 60 are going to count towards your degree. Edwin Simmons at Sidwins_Edwin. I noticed the portal have athletes that Michigan administrators will not accept for credit reasons. What can the coach do to get in front of this and not waste their time and resources? I think the first thing is just finding out how many credits a guy has, then being upfront about that 60 that I just mentioned, and understanding like, okay, this is going to be the point. And like a lot of guys are going to be precluded from that unless you get them, coming out of their sophomore season, generally. And also, I mean, it's not just the 60, it's also making sure that the classes correspond, right? Like if you have classes towards your major from your other one, you keep the same major, it might not transfer over in the same way. You got to start your academic progress over. There's some creative things I've been told Michigan does. I don't know what they are, but that would be finding out all of that stuff at the outset. And that's not necessarily always going to be easy because you're not going to start off with, hey kid, what's your transcript look like, right? Like you want to build the relationship first. So it's just kind of part of it. Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. If Underwood is the 2021 JJ McCarthy role to start the season, is in that role rather, how often do you believe we'll see him throw? Seemed like JJ didn't throw much at all in conference games, and especially not downfield until the Ohio game, if I remember. Well, he threw downfield in his very first pass was a touchdown to Dalen Baldwin. He had the big pass downfield. And again, this was coming in late in the game against Wisconsin, again to Dalen Baldwin. I think you'll see Bryce do a lot more as far as that's concerned. I don't think you're going to necessarily limit him to just being a running quarterback. I think everything will be on the menu, and I think you'll be eager to see what he can do in terms of throwing downfield straight away. Jacob Shavoria is Locked On Wolverines the best performing podcast on the Locked On Network? I did some digging, and it looks like it is. First off, no, we are not. Locked On Auburn. Sometimes on audio, we're somewhere in the 2 to 7 range. Depends on the topics of the week. Video, we're almost never in the top 10. Seems hard to believe sometimes, especially I thought we'd be number 1 during the Connor Stallion saga, and we weren't. At least not according to the newsletter that gets sent out. He continues, who did the podcast before you and what happened? Nobody. We founded it. Well, Locked On Network already existed. They asked me to start the podcast for the Wolverines. What are the odds Ryan Day leaves Ohio State for the NFL if he wins it all this year? That man looks stressed. I think the NFL seems to want him based off, like, you don't see his name circulating. I think he'd be more likely to leave for maybe another job that opens up. Not saying anything specific. But yeah, he does seem stressed. And it does kind of make you think like he's going to want to go to a place that isn't as much of a pressure cooker at some point. But I'm just surmising. I don't know. If you're an angry Buckeye about this, I'm just surmising. I'm not like, it's just clear that like when he says the worst thing that's ever happened to him other than his dad dying is losing to Michigan and he's lost 4 straight years. That's not a great place to be in from a life standpoint. The Rican Raider at Hamstan87. Why is there so much concern over the wide receiver room? Seems like Bryce can make anyone much better. I agree. Also, last time I said Ryan Day was a good Halloween costume for you. Turns out you can do the voice well, too. Can't escape it. So it's been a while since I've done the voice. Like, about our team. About our, talk about our toughness. Listen. Sarah's told me that you guys are right, that I do kind of look like Ryan Day, and I don't like any of you for it. So, FYI. Great Bambino X at Colossus O'Cloud X. Previously, you were talking Skylar Bell and said Michigan isn't going to let guys take 1 semester classes get a Michigan degree. Was that just an example, or is Bell really 1 semester from graduation? If he graduates this spring, any chance he enters the portal and joins us then? I think it depends on what is coerced him to stay at UConn, right? Like if he signs some kind of financial agreement that basically makes it impossible to get out of, then yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, I was speaking very specifically about Skylar Bell. And I think that it's possible. Is it probable? I'm not sure. But that's why one of the reasons why I say hang tight, because you don't know. You don't know if they get out of spring ball and it's like, okay, yeah, now they can do it. But yeah, that is an issue with more than just Skylar Bell, but I was speaking specifically about him. Clark at Blue for Life 8, Coach Newsome still being the O-line coach has me a bit concerned. Do you think we see an improvement in the line this year or just another mediocre year for them? I'm less concerned because of them being able to bring in Juan Castillo, and remember, analysts can coach directly now, so I would be less concerned. And they got better over the course of the year. They did. Was it as emphatic as like Ed Warner in year one? No, but they got better, and certainly I feel like they need more bodies. And so kind of just give us some time and we'll see how that goes. All right, we're going to get to the Blue Crew here in just a moment. All right, we might be able to get everybody in. Maybe. Not when I say everybody, not everybody. We had 58 questions this time around. And so again, being selective. But as far as everyone I have on my list, which is another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think we can get those in the next 8 minutes. What do you think? We're going to try it. Start with Richard Schumacher at RW Schumacher. Thanks for sneaking in a new guy last time. You're welcome. I appreciate you being a repeat. As it stands today, what position group for Michigan will be the most improved next year over the 2024 team, and which group still needs work? I mean, obviously we kind of covered that, but let's look at it a different way. I'm going to say that, oh man, we kind of went over it a lot yesterday. So let me kind of do that again in a way. Quarterback, I think, will be significantly improved. Offensive line, I think, will be pretty well improved. Wide receiver, I think, will be significantly improved. Tight end, I think, will be a little bit worse. Running back, I think, will be at least equal, probably better. Look on the defensive side, defensive tackle will be slightly worse, but it's still pretty good. Defensive edge rusher, I think, will be equal. Linebacker, I think, will be better. Safety, I think, will be equal. And then cornerback, I think, that's hard to say. So I'm going to say cornerback needs the most work. And then the offensive places, quarterback, wide receiver, are where it's going to be most improved year over year. Jonathan Petzold at J_Petzold. During the 2023 season, the Michigan football culture seemed to be built on faith. I heard lots about baptisms happening among players. You know, if faith is still a pillar of the culture. I'm a pastor, so I really appreciated hearing that faith was a big part of a component. It still is, to my knowledge. You haven't heard as much of outspoken nature as it was, but Pastor Robbie Emery, who's the team chaplain, told me the day of the game that he had baptized 4 guys the night before. He was really proud of Kendrick Bell giving his life to Jesus because Ronnie Bell he also baptized him. So it is still certainly a big part of it. They haven't been as outspoken about it outside of Donovan Edwards and the occasional person here and there as it was last year, but it is. Maybe it's not as much as Ohio State is talking about it, which, by the way, big shout out to Travion Henderson because he's just been awesome. I've got a buddy down in Columbus that needs some help, and Travion has been right there. So big shout out to Travion. I know people don't love to hear praise for the on-field enemy, but remember, that's an on-field thing. In terms of the game, we're still all people, and people don't love hearing that, but I got to tell you that anyway. Don't hate somebody just because they're wearing another jersey in terms of the actual, like, in life. You never know. That's why, like, you look at Jarrett Irons and Orlando Pace are, like, great friends. Donovan Edwards and Travion Henderson are great friends. So, just to say in there. Cliff Washburn at Double Neves. Outside of the wide receiver room, what position needs more help? I feel like the linebacker room is pretty thin if Barham is moving to DE. I'm not sure if he is going to stay that way just based off of just kind of what you look at. I mean, maybe he does, but I feel like he's going to end up sticking at linebacker. No, despite what they say, right? This is just me trying to be logical about it. And I mean, they did get Troy Bowles in, and they certainly could say, okay, with Troy Bowles, Jimmy Rolder, I don't know about Jaden Hood, but Cole Sullivan, Jason Hewlett, they might feel like, okay, we can rock and roll here still. So you got to let guys develop and let guys in and do all that kind of stuff too. Guys tend to get better year over year. But cornerback is the other one. We've obviously covered that already, so we will move on as to not waste too much time. Mr. Michigan at GGoBlue24. Hope all is well, big guy. Appreciate it. With the Bryce Underwood edition, where do we land in the Big Ten this time next year? Hard to imagine we don't win at least 9 games this year with any semblance of an offense. I mean, at this juncture, based off of what Michigan has coming and what like schools like Ohio State are going to lose, what Penn State might lose, what Oregon is losing, I think I'd at least put them in that, hey, they can win the Big Ten conversation. They beat Ohio State for the 4th straight year. The schedule looks amenable. There isn't a game on that schedule next year that I would say at this juncture is not winnable. So I'll go ahead and say that Michigan very well could win the entire conference next year. I think they all certainly are capable. It would take maybe some underachievement or injuries or another team overachieving to make that not a possibility. Xavier Ely at Xavier Ely 105. Why does Fred Moore, Walker, Marsh with a capable quarterback seem scary to some? Do you feel like these three could become an above average room? Absolutely. I absolutely like Amarian Walker is, keep in mind, he had that big catch against Washington and you're like, okay, that's what we've been looking for. And then he got injured in that same game and we didn't see him for the rest of the year. So if he can stay healthy, because again, injury precluded him from playing corner. So that's been a big thing. If he can stay healthy, it's possible. Also, is the credit issue based on too many credits to come in and get a degree from Michigan or lack of? Too many, right? Because you don't want to redo all kinds of work, I think would be the big part of it. All right, we're going to finish under time. And no, I'm not going to go and answer other people's questions. No offense. Delicious Bucks Tears at U of M fan _ for life. Bryce Underwood is an obvious other than him. I must have missed another one in there from you. What freshman do you expect to burn their red shirt next year? We've already done Marsh. I'm not going to go receiver. So let's think critically here. I mean, Shamari Earls would be, I think, the biggest obvious. I think Shamari Earls is 100% going to play. Is he going to be a starter? I think that remains to be seen. But I think like he's absolutely going to play. The other one that I would add in, we talked about linebackers earlier. Nathaniel Owosu-Boateng has got an absolute chance to also burn his red shirt and be that guy that comes in rotation. As far as starters, I mean, Underwood could be a starter. Marsh could be a starter. Outside of that, a little harder to kind of figure out. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again on tomorrow's Friday. Wow, this week's flown by. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks. Peace.